Good morning, everyone. It's me, Butterfly Spirit 314. So it's like 12 at night, and I decided I would make this random video for you guys. In this video, I'm going to talk about my listening progress. Got my hair pulled back specifically because it's nighttime and stuff, and also because I did some yard work today, and I wanted to keep my hair off my neck while I was doing like yard work and stuff. So I'm just right now, I'm just chilling and stuff. Got my ponytail and everything. What I wanted to talk to you guys about is my listening progress. So far, right now, in the book I'm reading about listening, I'm in chapter 6 of the book, and I am really making progress. So, my plan is that there are some exercises in chapter 5 that I want to kind of go back to and kind of work through a few of them. And the thing is when I do the exercises in the book, that's what actually helps me to make a lot of progress with listening. And it actually like transforms the way that I listen and things. So for me, the exercises actually do work, which I really love. In terms of how my listening has improved since I read chapter 5. I have to say that when it comes to me talking to people, what I do now in conversation is, like I said in a prior video, is that I'm having more deeper conversations with people. So normally when I'm in a conversation with somebody, a lot of times what I'll do is that I will turn the conversation to myself, and or there may be a situation where somebody's talking about something, and I may go and I may kind of give a response that kind of closes off like the conversation. And that doesn't make me a very empathetic listener. So, what I've been doing since I did the exercises in chapter 5 is I've taken steps to actually deepen my listening. So, when I'm in a conversation with people, like I'll give you an example. So, when was it on? I think it was Thursday. So, on Thursday, I went to work and I parked in a parking garage, and I got in the elevator, and there was this girl that I was sitting next to in the elevator, and she had tattoos. So I thought her tattoos looked really cool. And so, as it turned out or whatever, I said, "Hey, I really like your tattoos," because they were really cool. She had these like flower tattoos and stuff, and she was like, "Oh, thanks." And so, as we're getting off the elevator, we're going out the door. Then what I did is, me and her were talking, and she shared things with me about her tattoos. So she told me about how the fact, like, she has flower tattoos, but she was like, "Well, I don't even like flowers." And I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, pretty much she has tattoos because she just like lets her tattoo artists do what they want. And so, she basically lets them do like flower tattoos, and she had like tattoos like on her arms and stuff like that, which I thought was super cool. Turns out she works at the same job I do. She just works in a different department. I don't know what department because I didn't ask her because we talked about tattoos. So she told me about how it takes 3 to 4 hours to get tattoos. She told me she's not a fan of needles, but she has like this morbid curiosity with tattoos and stuff. So she just kind of goes for it. And I'm like, "Well, isn't it painful?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." She's like, "Yeah, but she still gets them anyway. And she was telling me about that. She's the type of person, like, she doesn't like to look when they're doing the tattoos on her arms and stuff. But she said that even though she doesn't like needles and looking at what's going on and stuff when it comes to tattoos, she still looks because she's curious about like what they're doing and stuff like that. And so I was like, hmm, you know. And so here I am having this conversation with this girl about tattoos. And, I had the actual confidence to actually start up a conversation. And it wasn't about me, this was about her. And along the way, I was basically, asking her questions, showing interest in something that was a passion to her. And I found that I learned along the way. And she's like, well, she's like, well, if you don't like tattoos or whatever, she's like, oh, you can just get a small one, you can get one on your ankle or whatever. And do you know the amazing thing about me remembering that conversation that me and her had? I was actually able to remember word for word things that she said about her tattoos. And she even talked about when she was 18, she said she's glad she didn't get a Powerpuff Girl tattoo that she was going to get. She said she was going to get the tattoo of the green one. I said, oh, you mean Buttercup? She was like, yeah. She's like, I'm glad I didn't get it and stuff. I was like, oh, okay. And what I was able to do is kind of read between the lines of what she was saying, which meant that she's glad that she waited to get tattoos later instead of getting tattoos when she was 18. And the thing is that by me doing things like the book recommended, which is asking open-ended questions, expressing interest, and allowing the other person to, suspending my own needs and actually letting another person talk without interrupting, and being patient, that allowed me to be able to take in the information from this other person and actually learn something. And, I shared this with you guys because the conversation really did happen. And I'm discovering like, it's amazing how great of a listener I'm becoming because I can actually remember what me and her talked about. And I even put the conversation of things I learned from the girl with the tattoos. I wrote that down in my mindful listening notebook. This is where I put like, I write down things that people have said in conversation with me. I write down like word for word what they told me and stuff. Now, I'm not going to remember everything, but I write down things that I hear them say. Another thing I've been doing is that even if I'm not in a conversation with somebody, something I do is that if I hear something interesting, like somebody says something interesting in another conversation, I will actually listen and then write that down in my mindful listening notebook. And I'll write down what I heard. And even if I'm not in a conversation, I'm still having like my listening ears on. And I think a lot of people feel like, oh, well, it's easy to listen. It's super easy. Not necessarily. There's things that can get in the way of you being able to listen, or for me being able to listen. There's a lot of distraction these days, things that get in the way that prevent us from being able to hear other people. And so, for me, what I'm trying to do is when I'm in conversation with somebody, or even if I'm not, and I'm hearing an interesting story somebody else is talking about in another conversation, I try to tune out distractions and actually listen to what I'm hearing. Because even if I don't know that person, I can actually, build a deeper understanding of who that person is and what they're passionate about. If you listen to people, they'll tell you a lot about themselves. And you can only learn things about people if you listen to them. That's how you learn about people. I overheard a conversation on Friday. I heard two girls talking. One girl was talking about how her family's immune systems were shit. And then and how every time her mom is sick, her mom's always on her deathbed when she's sick and stuff and everything and stuff. And the other girls talking about her family and how their immunity is and stuff or whatever for her family. People are always, smoking and drinking or whatever. The other girl that I was talking to, whose family has like immune system issues, she had a grandma that chain smoked until she was 95, and she was like, I can't believe my grandma's chain smoked and stuff. And, nothing was wrong with her immune system or anything. And she chain smoked. And I'm hearing this conversation between these two girls. The other girl talked about a situation with uncle that she had where she had an uncle, and her uncle was a cab driver, and her uncle was driving somebody one day, and then the guy that he was driving or whatever, one of the cab passengers that he was driving one day, the guy started fighting him from the back and stuff like that while he's trying to drive the cab. And then her uncle ended up having to shoot the guy that was trying to fight him from the back, that was a cab passenger or whatever. And then in the midst of the uncle shooting the guy, turns out that he ended up shooting himself in the neck. And then her uncle became a paraplegic and stuff. And he went into the hospital and stuff. And somehow her uncle died because he was over medicated from the hospital staff. And, it's interesting things like this. Like when you start improving your listening, like what I'm doing, you start hearing interesting stories of people talking in conversation. You don't even know these people, but yet you discover that people are talking about themselves and their families and different things like that. And I wouldn't have known anything about these girls if I was just over here, and I was making my breakfast too. And I was in the process of making my breakfast, but I was also listening to them, and I was tuning out distractions and stuff while I was listening to these two girls. And I will tell you, there is a such thing as being overwhelmed, okay? Because these girls talked about some more stuff that I probably wouldn't remember, but the things that stood out to me, I did, of course, put the story about the girl's uncle in my mindful listening notebook, and then the other girl talking about her grandma chain smoking and living to 95, and still having a strong immune system. I wrote these things down, and the amazing thing is that I'm discovering that as I'm listening, like I'm discovering that I'm learning so much more about people. And also, the things I learn about people, it allows me to start conversations with people too at a later time. Like, for example, there's this guy who's a supply guy at my job. He will like refill the coffee and stuff like that, and stuff on the different floors of my job. And so I think it was like maybe a couple weeks ago, he told me he was going to go on vacation and visit his family in California. He said that the plan was that, he was going to surprise his mom. I guess his mom lives in like a nursing facility. And so he and his siblings were going to go to his mom's nursing home facility and stuff. And, he was going to jump out and surprise his mom or whatever, and things. And so I remember he said that in conversation because I was listening to him. I was talking to him. And so when I saw him when he came back from vacation, I said, hey, I said, hey, to the supply guy. He was refilling the coffee. I said, hey, how'd your vacation go? And he thought for a second. He was like, oh, yeah. He said, I just got back from vacation. And he was like, I'm like, hey, did you surprise your mom like you said you're going to? He was like, yeah, actually, I did. He said, she's 88 years old and stuff like that. He's like, well, she does, forget things, from time to time and stuff like that and stuff. So she was surprised when I showed up or whatever. And, he talked about his vacation in California. In the conversation, he told me that he used to live in California for like 12 years and stuff. When he was there, he used to be a limo driver. He used to drive people to like the Hollywood Museum and stuff. So, a lot of the sites that people are super excited about when he goes to California, he's not too excited about going to because he lived in California for 12 years. And he even told me in conversation when I was talking to him on Friday, he was like that a small house, like a small house where I currently live at right now, that's like it'd be 250,000 in California. That same house, like small house, will be $500,000. And he was talking about how the homeless, like it's a issue with the homeless and things. He talked about how, people are, working in industries and stuff like that, caregivers and other industries and stuff or whatever. Like he said, like people who may take care of rich people's homes and stuff. And he's like, they don't even make a good wage and stuff like that. He's like, well, how are they going to live on 50,000 out there? It's unheard of. He's like, millionaires are fine, but he's like the people who work for him are not and stuff. And like he's sharing all this information with me, and I'm just listening to him. And guys, I have to tell you that, like I was saying before, me learning things about people allows me to now bring up conversations with people. And some people might say, oh, well, that's easy. But the thing is, you know, I discovered that, hey, I thought I used to be a great listener because, my job, I'm like, well, I'm a great listener and everything. But I've discovered that in the past, I haven't been the best listener. And, I think improving my listening skills is actually helping me a lot. And it's helping me to learn a lot about people and what their, aspirations and passions are and stuff. And it's really cool. And it's helping me to be a more enjoyable person to talk to for people, you know. And I think that's amazing. And that's the power of communication is when people actually want to talk to you. When they actually want to talk and they see you're interested in them, like that is what makes a really cool and like seriously huge difference. So I tried making this video like a few times at work and it just didn't pan out. But tonight I finally just like decided, hey, let's go ahead and do it. So, guys, you know, I'm discovering that, listening is not the easiest skill. It's definitely something that you have to work on. And, how we listen can be determined by, how we were raised. Did people listen to us when we were growing up? If they didn't, we internalize that kind of stuff. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that goes into listening. But, by and large, I'm discovering like literally right now, like how much I'm learning about people and how cool it is because when I'm talking to people, like I learn new stuff I didn't even know. And it's just so cool, and it helps me to connect deeper to people, and putting aside my own needs is pretty cool. And I will tell you this I was talking to each of my siblings tonight, and I have to tell you, the conversation was different. Like when I was talking to my sister, the conversation was different because I wasn't interrupting my sister. I was letting her talk. You know, I was listening to the things that she was saying, and I was kind of listening behind what she was saying to understand her point of view. And that's something I've never did. And I think my sister was kind of a little hesitant, like, oh, you're listening to me? I'm like, yeah. So, I'm starting to, the listening practice that I'm putting in, like at work, is actually starting to work in conversations with people in my family, which is amazing. And my brother told me, like, when I was talking to him, with him, I was kind of doing my regular kind of talking communication, but I was doing that conversation. I did have my listening ears open and stuff. And my brother shared this funny video with me and everything. And I was taking an interest in what my brother was doing too, when he called. So, I mean, it was super cool to be able to do that and let that translate to family conversations, and that transforms our relationship to his family. And that's super cool. So, I'm on my way, folks. I'm on my way. Definitely on my way. So, yeah, it's really cool. It's really nice and stuff to learn things and stuff as well. So I'm having a good time listening, and I did have one day at work. I had one day at work where I I was procrastinating on reading the book, and I was kind of turned off to reading it. But I let myself read a page, and then I literally just got straight back into like I just straight up got back into like reading, and I was glad I let myself move forward. And it was a day that it was like raining outside or whatever, but I am super glad that I let myself do that. So glad. Whew. So the tiredness is starting to get to me right now. So think I'm gonna wrap this video up and everything, but I'm seeing really good progress. And as you guys can see, I'm sharing with you guys things I learned about other people. And it's just amazing, you know. I'm having a good time doing it. And it's awesome. So that's pretty much all with me right now, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video and stuff like that. And thank you for watching. Bye, y'all.